Good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Aaron White here with an update on the weather situation that's developing here for today. We have a weather impact alert as we are tracking potential for severe weather, and that's already happening here this afternoon. So thanks for joining us here on 10 TV Plus. I want to get into the maps right now. Just in the last half an hour, we have a new severe thunderstorm watch that has been issued here, and you'll just notice that a few more counties just got added into that as we started here. Anywhere that's in pink, that is the severe thunderstorm watch. So this is the area where severe weather is possible through 7 p.m. That includes the Columbus Metro. That includes Marion, Dayton, up to Cleveland, as we are already tracking a few thunderstorms that have become severe. Now, most of the activity is to the north and west of the Columbus Metro. So if you're around here, if you're thinking that we're not really seeing much, well, there are a couple showers nearby. But the severe weather, again, that is focused here to the north. And notice multiple severe thunderstorm warnings that are in effect. Anywhere you see these orange boxes, those are severe thunderstorm warnings. And we actually got a report of golf ball size hail that was around the Russell's Point area, so just north of Bell Fountain and north and west. And this is what that storm that is now tracking and likely may stay just south of Marion. But it is going to bring that potential for at least quarter-size hail, and that's why we do have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect that does include the city of Marion. But right now, depending on how this storm tracks over the course of the next 15 minutes, it may stay just to the south of town. Another storm there that's heading towards Bucyrus. That's going to be another one to the north there, heading off toward the east-northeast. And these are all moving at about 35-40 miles per hour and will bring that chance for at least quarter-size hail, and we could also see some winds gusting up to near 45, maybe as high as 60 miles per hour. Now, as we look to the south and west, we have more storms developing. They're not severe right now, but notice here we had several thunderstorms develop in just the last hour. A line of thunderstorms there stretching back to the west there into Indiana. Couple more stronger thunderstorms there on the east side of Dayton. Another one just south of Washington Courthouse and near the Wilmington area. Those do bear watching, especially that storm near Dayton, as that is looking a little bit stronger here. And we'll have to watch that as we go through the next 30 to 45 minutes. Now, as we talk about storm reports here in the last 6 hours, again, that hail, golf ball, there was another report of some quarter-size hail. Again, both of those were around the Russell's Point area. All in all, we haven't seen too much active severe weather, but I think that's going to be changing here through the course of the next several hours as we track these storms building to the east. So I do want to talk about at least a couple of these storms, at least putting a track on some of them. So as we talk about each of the storms moving in from the north and west, these storms, again, as you can see with the boxes here, are moving off to the east at about 35 miles per hour. So as we track a couple of them, just bear with me for one moment here as we talk about this storm in particular. If it does stay south of Marion, again, these are moving at about 37 miles per hour. So that's going to take it towards Prospect. That'll be around 116. So in just the next few minutes, Marion, 119, Cardigan, around 129, sorry, Cardington around 129, and then Chesterville, that's going to be around 137, Perrysville around 154. So again, this is moving at about 35, near 40 miles per hour, and it looks like the core of it, like I said, may just stay south of Marion, but we will have to watch for that. At least some moderate rainfall, not out of the question here, but the potential for hail is looking like it's going to stay just a little bit further to the south and west. So as we talk about that potential for hail, go ahead and look at where we are seeing at least some of that showing up here on the maps. Right now, not seeing a lot, so that is at least good news. These storms may be weakening a little bit. They flared up quick, they produced some hail, and now may start to be weakening a tad, and that would be good news. Of course, we'll have to watch and see if we see those severe thunderstorm warnings be discontinued. They do go until 1:30. Another one does go until 1:45. So at least 30 more minutes on the latest severe thunderstorm warning. We'll have to see if those are extended further past 2 o'clock. But right now, as we look at the map here, where you see a little bit of that gray and right down there, that's all we're seeing for hail. And really with that, isn't that impressive. Normally we see at least a little bit of blue showing up on the map for potential for some larger hail up to about quarter size. And you get the darker blues shown up there. Then we're talking about that golf ball size hail. So let's go ahead and look at that. here over the last hour or so. Let's click on the other one. So looking at the hail history here, give that a second to load and see if we actually look at the air. There you go. You can see a little bit more blue shown up there. There's that pass. So there's where we saw that golf ball size hail. It's a little bit far off the map there, but where we had more blue showing up, that's when we were talking about golf ball size hail. So if you follow that east, all we're seeing is a little bit of gray. That's a weakening trend. That is good news. That's what we want to see with these storms, and we may not have to deal with as much severe weather through the course of this afternoon. However, we are talking about more storms developing later on. They're already developing in Tennessee, around the Memphis area. There's a complex of thunderstorms that's going to build in here later on today, and it will bring that risk for some severe weather here this evening. So let's go ahead and look at that here on the hour-by-hour forecast. So we got thunderstorms here right now for the next few hours, and notice this whole complex building in from the south and west that could bring us potential for some higher wind gusts over 60 miles per hour if it holds together. There are still some questions right now, and this is something similar to what we had happen back on Tuesday. We had this complex of storms that moved in from Indiana, raced across the state of Ohio, and it did bring some damaging wind gusts. There were a lot of trees and power lines that were knocked down. And then that complex really flared up and got even stronger when it moved into Pennsylvania. There were reports of 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts in the Pittsburgh area with those same storms that rolled through downtown Columbus, producing winds around 60 miles per hour. So they got stronger. And that is something we'll have to watch for that complex later on as we look across areas down to the south where we have those thunderstorms that are building up right now into parts of Tennessee and eastern Arkansas. So zooming out the map here, so just bear with me for just one moment. We can look at some of those storms that are currently well to our south and west. So way down here, and they're starting to approach areas just well east of Paducah. Moving into the Nashville area now, we have a couple severe thunderstorm warnings to the north and one to the south and west. So it's going to be these storms that are going to track across Kentucky, across Tennessee, eventually moving into at least southern Ohio. The question that remains is, are these storms going to get further to the north and impact the Columbus metro? I think a lot of it's going to stay south of Interstate 70, but there is going to be that chance, and that's about after 7 p.m., really after 8 p.m. would be the chance for these storms to make their way in. The question that remains is, are they going to start to shift a little bit further to the north and east, moving into Ohio, or will they stay a little bit further to the south and track here across Kentucky and really avoid our area? That would be good news, of course, and we'll have to watch and see how they really develop and strengthen and move over at least the next couple of hours. We're only at 1:18, so we have a long time to go for these storms to make their way a little bit closer to Ohio. So that's going to be the second round. Round number one, that's of course happening right now with these thunderstorms. Again, we have severe thunderstorm warning in effect there without storm. A little bit stronger one, you can see a bit more pink showing up there. That's an indication of at least the chance for some hail. This one, weakening. So notice that polygon, that area of orange, that's the severe thunderstorm warning, the box. That is likely not going to be extended to the east. So we may see that warning allowed to expire here in the next few minutes. Meanwhile, we have a couple thunderstorms here. It was this one that produced the hail around Russell's Point. That is actually weakening. We're not seeing that coloring there, that pink. We're not seeing any pink showing up there. So an indication that the hail potential is weakening. So that is definitely some good news, but there is still the chance that we could still get some gusty winds up to near 60 miles per hour with that batch of thunderstorms there stretching from just south of Marion back to the west and north of Bell Fountain. So going to go ahead and zoom into that storm here just to look at it a little bit closer just to see what's happening here. But like I said, there's not a lot going on with that storm. It has weakened here in the last hour, which is good, but we do still have a severe thunderstorm warning on the off chance that we see at least maybe some hail, especially here around Rush Creek. And notice that darker colors in there. That's a chance we could see at least some small hail. It wasn't zero. There is still a chance we could at least get some hail, maybe around dime size, maybe penny size. But I do believe, based on the trend here in the last half an hour, that that chance for severe hail, larger than quarter size and especially up to near golf ball size that we saw just about 30 minutes ago around Russell's Point. Not seeing that anymore. So good news, weakening trend is occurring, and hopefully that does continue here for the next half hour. Then we have to watch these other storms, of course. Those ones are developing still around the Dayton area, other storms developing to the west. That's all going to be at least bringing that potential for some storms that could become severe and will be moving into the Columbus metro here around 4 o'clock this afternoon. So if you're watching us here on Facebook, if you're watching us here on 10 TV Plus, if you have any questions about the storms that are making their way through right now this afternoon, feel free to send us a message, send us a text message about any of your questions that you have. You can drop a comment on Facebook as well, and we'll try to answer some of those questions here as we go through this afternoon. And we're going to be on here for a while just talking about the potential for severe weather. If we see any more warnings issued, there's the number there you can see at the bottom of your screen. Text any questions that you have about the storms, about the severe weather, anything that's going on to 614-460-3345, and I'll try to answer them as we continue on talking about this threat for severe weather. Got them pulled up here on the laptop, so we're going to be tracking this for you here this afternoon. So I want to just go ahead and reset. The time is now 1:21. If you're just joining us here on Facebook, if you're watching us here on 10 TV Plus, we have a bit of active weather that's starting to develop. It's already been going on for the last little while, and we have a severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect now through 7 p.m. and it does include a good portion of the area. It includes Columbus, it includes Marion, basically all the way from Dayton through Columbus up to Cleveland into northwestern parts of Pennsylvania, where we have that potential for severe weather. And what we're talking about today, potential for large hail up to quarter size, maybe even larger than that. We did get one report of golf ball size hail around Russell's Point, so there has been some significant hail, but also potential for winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. That's going to be a concern here for today. Now, the tornado threat, that's on the low side. It's not zero. It is something we'll have to monitor if any of the storms get any rotation. We'll be watching that closely here through this afternoon. And then potential for some heavier rainfall. I don't think flash flooding is a high concern for today, but it is going to be something we'll watch for tonight and tomorrow as we have more rain building in across the region going through the day on Saturday. Not going to be torrential rainfall, but there is potential that many areas could pick up at least 1 inch of rainfall through the next 24 to 36 hours. So we're also watching that very closely here through today. So again, severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 7 p.m. So this is a look at the current radar picture. We have storms developing right now. We got a couple storms near and north of Columbus. Those are not severe, but some heavy downpours not out of the question. Also another storm back to the west around Dayton, at least on the eastern side, getting closer to London. A couple more showers popping up. So things are getting to that point where we're kind of getting towards the prime heating of the day. Temperatures are up into the 70s. We got humidity. Those dew points are rather high into the 60s. So everything's coming together. And now we just got that the igniter, basically, the thing to kind of kick everything off in this environment. And that's what's happening now here this afternoon across the state of Ohio. So again, some storms north of Columbus that have become severe. There are severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. The strongest thunderstorm is still well to the north. That's going to stay away from our area, well north of Mansfield. That where you see the pink shown up there, indication that we could be talking about some quarter size hail or even larger. These other storms, this one is weakening. That's good news. Some heavy rainfall into Bucyrus. Heavy rainfall, moderate rainfall, at least around Marion. More of the core of that thunderstorm is staying just a little bit further to the south. Good news on that front. It does appear like that storm is weakening, and hopefully that remains the case because we aren't going to be seeing as much of a hail potential with that thunderstorm. And as we talk about that potential for hail, going to bring that up here, so bear with me just for one moment. Let's look at the hail, and you'll notice not really seeing much on the map. We're seeing a little bit there. That's with that storm where we're talking about that pink shown up there on the map. That's an indication where we look at the radar picture and can see that there's at least heavy rainfall. There might be potential for some hail. This is another product from the radar that actually shows where there's more of a likelihood that we are actually seeing some hail. And notice the coloring there. It's not strong. It's not a high indication that we're looking at large hail by any means, but hail size maybe up to nickel, maybe as large as a quarter right in there, but that is way, way to our north. Elsewhere, we're not seeing any coloring showing up on the map. We're not seeing any gray, not seeing any blue. That's normally what we're looking for here on the radar. So if I put the hail history, this is a 2-hour history of the tracks of the hail, you'll notice, once it loads in here, you're going to notice that just north of Bell Fountain. Watch what happens here as it loads. May take just a moment here, but we did see at least some hail that did produce. There you go. You can see that track building in, but notice it really does weaken. So we also saw another hail track northeast of Kenton, but really north of Bell Fountain. That's where we had that hail, Russell's Point, golf ball size, quarter size hail. In addition, there were a couple different reports. One that had some quarter size hail a little bit further to the east as the storm was weakening, but the first report that we got from the National Weather Service did say some golf ball size hail with that storm, and because of what we're seeing there on the map, that blue, that's a good indication that there was some golf ball size hail. But if you follow that storm, we don't see any more blue, we don't see any more light gray. All we see is the lowest color for the hail product, and that's basically saying the storm is weakening and some good news. So hopefully that continues the trend as we are watching these storms again moving to the east at about 35 miles per hour. More storms developing, non-severe. We'll have to still watch them. There's that environment. Everything's there coming together for that potential for these stronger thunderstorms that could produce hail up to quarter size and winds of 60 miles per hour. So now as we look at the storm one more time, it does appear like maybe it is starting to strengthen just a little bit. Noticing a little bit of pink showing up there, so maybe that is an indication that we could at least be getting some small hail. And we're talking about hail size maybe around the size of a dime, so not severe enough that it's going to damage any property. Usually that's when we talk about quarter size hail, so about at 1 inch in diameter. Indications right now, at least what we looked at on the hail and what we're looking at here on the live radar, is that it's going to be pretty small. It's not going to cause any damage, but still there is a severe thunderstorm warning that remains in effect here for the next few minutes at least. So we'll have to watch to see how these warnings expire. If this one's going to expire, which likely is going to happen here in the next few minutes until this one, I believe, goes until 1:30 here. So 3 more minutes. And based on that trend here into Bucyrus, it's weakening. So that's good news. Likely not going to see another severe thunderstorm warning on that storm. This one continues. That's moving to the north and east. That's going to be heading towards the Cleveland metro. This storm, as I mentioned earlier, if you were watching us here as we started off about 1:10, so we've been talking about these storms here for at least 15 minutes or so. That one has been kind of going up and down. It was pretty strong. It produced some hail. Then it weakened, and it does appear like it may be trying to strengthen once again. But it also looks like the core of it, the potential for hail and those higher winds, would be just south of Marion. So definitely some good news with that storm. But still, it is the main one that we're going to have to watch here for the next short while. So let's go ahead and zoom into it just a little bit more so you can kind of see what is happening here on that storm and why we're talking about that potential for some hail. So Marion, if you're watching us here on 10 TV Plus, getting some pretty good rainfall, some moderate rain, at least not out of the question there. Green Camp, a bit heavier and potential for some small hail, really focused in where you see the pink. That's where we were talking about potential for some hail. So as we look at that here on the radar picture, and probably not going to see too much happen. We had a little bit of gray show up there. That's an indication at least for very, very small hail, and doesn't look like anything's loading. So that may be a sign that while we see something on the reflectivity there, the radar product, we're probably only talking about heavy rainfall. Doesn't look like there's an indication that we're seeing any hail at the present time. So good news there. So we'll still be watching that, of course, but we're also watching these other storms here that have been developing to the south and west. We got a couple more, some brief heavy downpours going to be moving into the Columbus metro in the next 30 minutes. More storms back to the west, and it's going to be really this line way back here that we'll have to watch if any of these storms can get a little bit stronger and start to develop that potential for some hail and also bring in that threat for damaging wind gusts, potentially over 60 miles per hour. Right now, not seeing that as the case, not really seeing a big threat of that here at the moment, but it's also still pretty early in the afternoon. It's only 1:30, and we still have several more hours to go that these storms can really tap into the environment that we have in place and continue to develop. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully we don't have to deal with too much severe weather today, but we'll be tracking it for you here on 10 TV Plus and going through the rest of today here at 4, 5, and 6 o'clock. And even later on, we have more severe weather, more potential for storms even after 8 p.m. Our second round of storms, that builds in later this evening into the early part of tonight. Really between 7 p.m. and midnight is going to be the window for that second round of thunderstorms. And what's going on with that? Actually, let's zoom out and you can actually see what's happening with that round of thunderstorms. So as we look at things right now, again, we're tracking a couple storms that are potentially severe. But zooming things out here on the map, more storms developing, non-severe right now here around Cincinnati, and then further to the south and west. This is what we're watching here. This is really far away. This is that second round. This is going to be moving in again after 7 p.m. and likely closer to 8, 9, 10 p.m., especially for the Columbus metro. So there's a couple broken areas of storms, but notice severe thunderstorm warnings there. That's moving towards the north and east. So that's going to be tracking here across Kentucky and eventually moving into Ohio. So this does bear watching. It's still pretty far away, so a lot can happen, a lot can change over the course of the next several hours. Again, we're talking about after 8 p.m., it's just 1:30. So we're talking, 6.5 hours that this complex of storms has to develop. It could strengthen, it could weaken. It's going to really depend on how it interacts with the environment out ahead of it here across central eastern Kentucky into southern Ohio. So we're watching that. Also watching the storm south of Nashville. This whole complex is going to build in to the north. But the other question is, do the storms south of Nashville kind of overtake everything? Do they take away some of the energy from this northern part of the line, and this all weakens as it gets closer to Lexington, Cincinnati, and of course Columbus, closer to 9, 10 p.m. Hopefully that's the case. We see a weakening trend. We don't have to deal with as much severe weather. That's what we want to see. We'll still be tracking showers and storms, but are they going to bring hail and more so damaging winds? The wind threat is higher this evening into the early part of tonight with these storms. We may still see some gusty winds over 40 miles per hour, maybe not severe. Severe winds we're talking about over 60 miles per hour, and that's what's happening right now there in western Kentucky. But if the weakening happens, we'll still see some rain, still some showers and storms not out of the question here for this evening into tonight. And then we got more showers and storms building in here for tomorrow. Not expecting severe weather tomorrow. Good news there, but we have that chance for some heavy rainfall. Rainfall amounts over the next 24 to 48 hours, the next 1 to 2 days, could total over an inch of rainfall here across much of central and southern Ohio. And I wouldn't be surprised, especially as we get into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, when we get some of those heavier showers and storms, that we're talking about rainfall amounts in total from now through the end of the weekend through Sunday evening over 2 inches. So that's going to be a high threat potential for that heavy rainfall. But at least for the time being, the main threat is going to be that chance for some severe weather here over the course of the next few hours. Then again, with that secondary round later on this evening. So again, severe thunderstorm warning here in effect. This includes areas just south of Marion for that potential for some hail. Right now, we are starting to see at least a signal on the radar picture that it may be trying to strengthen just a little bit more, that we would have to watch to see if they do extend that severe thunderstorm warning even further to the east. Right now, may not be the case. This severe thunderstorm warning going into effect until 1:45, so we have about 10 minutes on that. So it's 1:34 now, so yeah, 11 minutes on that severe thunderstorm warning, and we'll watch to see if the National Weather Service sees anything else, if they see that potential that this storm is strengthening a little bit more, like I just mentioned. Then they might decide to extend that severe thunderstorm warning. If it doesn't, hopefully it doesn't, and we see that weakening trend continuing. But in any case, there is some heavy rainfall happening just south of Marion, and at least the potential for some smaller hail, less than quarter size. I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing at least maybe some pea-size hail within that thunderstorm there, basically just north of Delaware, between Marion and Delaware here, crossing the highway, and that's going to be happening in about the next 10 minutes. Already getting some heavy rainfall there, but the potential for hail still just a little bit further to the south and to the west. There's another update on the radar scan, so still seeing something that bears watching with that potential for hail, but otherwise we're going to be shifting back to the west as we're starting to see a little bit more strengthening happening there, even with that storm further to the south. So bear with me just for one moment here as we look down towards a couple of those thunderstorms. So that one near Bell Fountain definitely bears watching. It is getting a little bit stronger here. Still not a strong signal that we're talking about potential for hail, but heavy rainfall, of course, some heavy downpours definitely likely as these storms are moving into Bell Fountain here in the next 5 minutes. This storm, that is still tracking to the east. So as we talk about that, eventually moving further to the east, south of Mansfield, north of Mount Vernon, and this one is staying north of the Columbus Metro. A couple other storms that do also bear watching. These ones are not severe, but some heavy downpours, definitely a possibility, and it does look like we're going to get at least this shower moving to the north and east, so that could bring some moderate rainfall here across the South Metro into downtown. It's going to be quick. It's only going to be lasting here maybe 5-10 minutes, so if you're heading out right now, grab the umbrella. You may encounter at least a couple showers, maybe some heavier downpours here for the next couple of hours as we continue to see more showers building in from the south and west and a little bit more stronger activity. Again, none of this is severe further south of I-70. We don't have any severe thunderstorm warnings here south of I-70 in Ohio. Just the ones further to the north, but still these are developing. They are moving into an environment that allows for that potential for severe weather. That's why we have that severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect here until 7 p.m. So all these storms really comes down to how they interact, how they develop throughout this environment. We are talking about temperatures that are pretty warm in the 70s. We have dew point temperatures, which is a measure of the moisture available in the air. Those are up into the 60s. So conditions are there for this severe weather. And again, that's why the National Weather Service has issued this severe thunderstorm watch, again, in effect until 7 p.m., stretching from Dayton through Columbus to Marion, over towards the east, Millersburg, and even the Cleveland Metro is in that severe thunderstorm watch here until 7 p.m. So if you're watching us here on 10 TV Plus, if you have any questions, you can send them to us. If you're watching on Facebook, just go ahead and drop a question in the comments section here, and I'll be answering them as we go through the rest of this afternoon. But it does appear like our severe weather, at least the immediate severe threat, may be winding down just a tad. We'll have to wait and see here. We got about 7 more minutes for that severe thunderstorm warning that is currently in effect around Marion. That goes until 1:45. If we don't see another severe thunderstorm warning issued, we're going to go ahead and reset, and we're going to come back on here live at 2 p.m. for our Weather Impact Show, giving you a live update, of course, on the storms and the potential for severe weather here for the rest of today, because we're not tracking just the storms right now. We're tracking a second round of storms this evening into the early part of tonight. After 7 p.m., that's where we're going to have to watch for more storms building in from the south and west. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, just looking at the map here. You'll see the radar picture. We have the storm, that one severe thunderstorm warning south of Marion. More storms developing back to the south and west. And those are also going to bring that potential for some severe weather. And it does look like the severe thunderstorm warning has been reissued. And what the National Weather Service is also noticing is some rotation. Now, they did not issue a tornado warning, but they have noticed that there is that potential that there might be a little bit of rotation within the thunderstorm itself. So this is a new severe thunderstorm warning. This is actually the old one. Let's go ahead and bring it over to the new one. So they are extending this one further to the east. This goes until 2:30. So this is a severe thunderstorm warning for Marion and Morrow County. Winds gusting up to near 60 miles per hour. hail size up to quarter size. So there is still that potential for hail. And what they're noticing now on the radar picture is that there could be a little bit of rotation trying to develop. So let's go ahead and look at that. So really what they're looking at is right in there where we could have some potential development of some rotation. It's not a strong signal, which is why, of course, they decided not to issue a tornado warning. If we were to talk about this area where there was just another update there, but it's not a strong indication of rotation that would prompt a tornado warning. What it is, though, it's an area of a little bit more broad rotation. So we're not talking about potential for a tornado developing, but if this red area, this is winds blowing away from the radar, with winds blowing towards the radar, there is some sort of rotation right in there. But because it's not really close, the red and the green aren't closer together, it's not a strong signal of very tight rotation that we look at for potential for a tornado. But still, in any case, it is something we have to watch, and that's why the National Weather Service decided to put that information on this severe thunderstorm warning, that there is that potential that the storm could be rotating enough to bear warning, at least that we'll have to watch for, that it could produce a tornado as it continues to strengthen and develop. Is that going to happen? Well, of course, there's no guarantee. There never is a guarantee when it comes to the weather, but what we are tracking is that storm moving into Morrow County that has some indications of strong winds over 60 miles per hour, potential for hail up to quarter size, and like we just saw there, that potential for some rotation. Right now, not strong, and hopefully it just falls apart and we don't have to worry about any sort of tornado threat developing. Of course, we're going to be watching that here over the next several minutes as we get new updates from the radar picture and see if they show any sort of evolution to that rotation. So that's what's happening with that storm right there. Again, we got more storms to the north and east moving into the Cleveland metro. Another storm that bears watching here, this one just actually moving into Bellefontaine. Not severe, but some heavy rainfall and maybe some small hail, not out of the question with that storm. And then, of course, all these other storms back to the south and west. These also still not severe, but heavy downpours, definitely a likelihood if you get stuck under one of these storms. Again, these are not severe. They are producing, wherever you see some of that red showing up there, heavy rainfall, definitely a high likelihood with all of these showers and storms, and they do extend further back to the south and west as we're watching that second complex moving in. Now, talk about reports. We haven't gotten a lot. There have been a few reports of severe weather with the storms that have been occurring there around Bellefontaine and over towards Marion. So right there, one hail report. So we had some quarter-size hail. We also had another quarter-size hail report, but the first one, that was for golf ball size hail that a trained weather spotter reported to the National Weather Service, and that is pretty severe. And we're talking about golf ball size hail that was around the Russell's Point area when that storm was first initially strong, and then it started to weaken here between Bellefontaine. So notice we don't have any more reports. So there was a weakening trend that happened, and then now it's starting to strengthen up once again, and it really does bear watching because not only where we talk about that threat for hail, but also talk about that threat for potential of some rotation developing within this thunderstorm. So again, that is a severe thunderstorm warning until 2:30, so another 47 minutes on that warning. That's across eastern Marion County, moving into western and central Morrow County with potential for quarter-size hail, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and that threat that we could be seeing some rotation in there. Again, not a tornado warning, but it still has to be kept an eye on because things can evolve really quickly. We've seen that many times here across the state of Ohio where we get severe thunderstorm warnings. They quickly strengthen, they quickly start to rotate, and could bring that potential for a tornado. Now, what I will say, the overall tornado threat is not high. We're not looking at widespread threat of tornadoes. What we are looking at is a higher threat for those high winds over 60 miles per hour and the potential for some hail. But sometimes some of these storms can just kind of get organized enough that they start to get a little bit of rotation, and that's what's happening on that storm south of Marion. So let's get you a little bit closer look at that storm here. We're going to be continuing with this here on our 10 TV Plus for the next several minutes as we are tracking that severe thunderstorm warning here until 2:30. So as we look at that storm here a little bit closer, again, you'll notice the brighter pink showing up. That's an indication that we're talking about at least with some hail potential just southeast of Marion. So likely wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing some quarter-size hail now. Again, this is within the severe thunderstorm warning box. This is heading towards the east, slightly north of east, so east-northeast, and that would take it just north of Ashley, south of Caledonia there. And again, the main core of the storm still staying to the southeast of Marion, still getting some heavy rainfall in town. But as we look at this continuing to build to the east-northeast, this main core where we have that threat for quarter-size hail is staying just a little bit further to the south and east. But what I want to focus in on again is why we have that tornado possible, that rotating thunderstorm tag on here as we look at the velocity picture, just to see if we're seeing any sort of rotation again. And there is something. Again, it's a very broad rotation, so it's not very well organized enough that we're concerned at this point of a developing tornado. If the red, where red and the green meet, when they're closer together, that's a stronger indication that we're looking at some stronger rotation within the storm, that we could be looking at a possible tornado developing. Right now, based on this picture that I'm seeing here on the radar, it doesn't really give that indication that we're seeing that potential for a tornado developing here at the present time. However, it's still rotation. There's still rotation within the thunderstorm, and that's one reason why we're getting that potential for hail. Storms that produce larger hail, well, there's rotation that's happening within the storm itself. Further closer to the ground, well, might not be having any of that rotation, of course, because there's no tornado. But when that rotation in the storm starts to get lower and lower, what we see here on radar is the green and the red getting closer and closer together, and that would be that thing that we have to watch here over the next few scans of the radar picture to see if there's any strengthening of that rotation. But based on what I've looked at here in the last 10 minutes as we've gotten some new updates, not seeing that here right now. So that's good news. But again, we're going to be watching this here as we get another scan of the radar picture just to see if we have any sort of rotation developing within that thunderstorm. So watching that very closely here. Again, the time is now 1:47. So if you're just joining us right now, we have a severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect until 7 p.m. this evening, and we are watching a few thunderstorms that have gotten a bit stronger and are producing the potential severe weather here. This is the one severe thunderstorm warning that we have right now. This is a severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect until 2:30. This is for eastern parts of Marion County. This also includes western and central Morrow County for that threat of 60-mile-per-hour winds, quarter-size hail, and also that threat for that rotation that we're watching very closely. And if you're just joining us here today on 10 TV Plus, we are talking about severe weather. You can ask your questions if you have any questions. If you're watching us on Facebook, all you have to do is drop a question in the comments section here on the Facebook Live. And also, if you want to text us, you can actually text us a number, text us your question, whatever question you have here about the severe weather threat that we're talking about for not even just the storm right now, but for more storms later on this afternoon. We're going to be watching these storms developing here for the next couple of hours. We might catch a break and then another complex of storms that's way to our south and west. It's over Kentucky right now. That's going to be our second round that we have to watch here for after 7 p.m. So again, if you have any questions, you can text that number here right down below at the bottom of your screen. That is 614-460-3345. And I'm going to go ahead and get those pulled up right now. And let's see if we got any questions coming in here. So just bear with me just for one moment as I get logged back in. And we will see what we got. So asking about a baseball game at Lewis Center tonight, 5:30 to 7:45. So well, I will say that is about the time where we might catch a break. Really looking at the storms right now through 4 p.m., maybe as late as 5. I do think, though, there is going to be a window where we don't have a lot of activity happening here this evening. So let me go ahead and pull that up onto the screen for you, looking at one of our computer models here. So just bear with me just for one moment as things are loading up. So we got the storms developing right now, moving to the east. And so it's not as widespread, but I do think still there is going to be a chance, lower chance of storms after 5:30, after 6 p.m. So that window for the game, it's there. I think there is a chance that the game would be okay. And then we'd have to be watching that activity clearing out as we get later on, and then more activity building in as we get closer to about 8, 9 p.m. So 5:30 to 7:45, I think there's going to be a window in there that they might get some of the game played, and maybe not all of it, but still just keep an eye on the radar as we're tracking storms. But hopefully it clears out just in time for some baseball later on this afternoon and evening. Another question, if we could get golf ball size hail here into Columbus. The potential is there. I know with the severe thunderstorm watch, they made mention that there is that chance that we could see hail. It's really just for the chance that a couple storms could produce hail up to golf ball size. We had that happen around Russell's Point with a storm that is now tracking just south of Marion, but it's not likely that every storm is going to be doing that. I would say the chances of getting golf ball size hail pretty low. It's still something we'll watch. If one of those storms gets a little bit stronger and decides to track towards the Columbus metro, we'll watch it closely for you. But the threat for significant hail is a little bit lower here for today. The biggest threat really with all these storms is going to be that threat for some heavy rainfall, but also that potential for those high wind gusts over 60 miles per hour, especially for this later activity that's going to be moving in later this evening into the early part of tonight, really between 7 p.m. and midnight. I would honestly argue for closer to 8 p.m. 8 p.m. to midnight is going to be the window for this complex of storms building in from the south. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. We haven't really spent too much time talking about the second round, but focused on what's happening right now, of course, because it is the immediate danger for some of us that are dealing with those thunderstorms. But further to the south and west, there are more storms on these satellite pictures. So again, watching all this activity here locally. But what we're also watching, if we zoom things out, notice there's a lot more activity here way to the south and west. Couple complexes of storms here in western Tennessee, now moving into western Kentucky. And then this activity right here stretching from Kentucky through Nashville down to the south, just west of the Huntsville, Alabama area. This is all moving to the east-northeast. This is that second round, and this is going to be tracking across the state of Kentucky and eventually making its way towards southern and central Ohio. What remains, the questions that we have to sort of answer over the next few hours, is how will these storms develop? Are they going to continue to stay strong, or will they start to weaken? The thing that's concerning right now is this environment here in Kentucky. There's not a lot of cloud cover. There's actually been a fair amount of sunshine. Here locally in Ohio, we've seen quite a bit of cloud cover. There's been a little bit of sunshine, so the energy is a bit stronger. There's a little bit more energy available here across Kentucky and especially down into parts of Tennessee as compared to what we have happening in southern Ohio. The other thing that's happening in Ohio, well, we got all these little pop-up showers and storms that are happening right now. So could those storms right now be taking away from what happens later on? Not saying that's a guarantee, but it's the trend. We have to watch everything. We really have to watch these storms and how they evolve over the next several hours as they get closer to us here in Ohio. That's, again, going to be after 7 p.m. for that complex of storms. So that's still some time, still something you want to keep a close eye on if you have plans this evening into the early part of tonight. That's where we're watching here for that time frame. Otherwise, we have other storms on the radar picture right now. So time is now 1:55, and we are going to continue to track these storms for you here over the course of the next half an hour. We have that severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect until 2:30 here this afternoon. So let's go ahead and take it to the maps one more time, looking at the severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect until 7 p.m. Again, if you're joining us right now, you can text us a question, 614-460-3345, and we'll answer them here on 10 TV Plus. Or if you're watching us on Facebook, just drop a question there into the comments section. So again, severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 7 p.m. And actually just here at the station, we're getting a pretty good downpour. It looks like there's one of those storms is moving right over 10 TV right now. So nothing severe again in the Columbus Metro, but still something we have to watch. And actually, just as we moved over to the radar picture, we now have a tornado warning that is in effect. This tornado warning, let's go ahead and go to that. So this is affecting areas around Cardington and Mount Gilead. Those are in the path of a potential tornado. So again, this is a tornado warning now that was just issued here in the last couple of minutes. That's tornado warning goes into effect. That's in for Morrow County. So this is a tornado warning that is in effect here for the next 35 minutes. Okay, so we are watching this very closely here for that one tornado warning. So actually, if we can, let's go ahead and go on the air with this tornado warning. We're on 10 TV Plus right now. We're gonna go ahead and break into programming as well. And thank you for joining us here on 10 TV. We are breaking into coverage now because we have a tornado warning that was just issued here in the last few minutes. This is a tornado warning that is in effect for Morrow County until 2:30. So the time is now just before 2 o'clock. And we've been watching this storm here on 10 TV Plus for the last almost an last hour, and watching the storm strengthen here as it had potential. It did produce some hail over quarter size. And now what's been the concern here is the storm developing some rotation on the radar picture. This is a radar indicated, so this is not a confirmed tornado on the ground, but because of the situation and how the radar picture has shown this rotation evolving for the last 20-30 minutes or so, it has been a concern, and that is why the National Weather Service did decide to issue that tornado warning, again, in effect for Morrow County until 2:30 here this afternoon. So this is going to be a tornado warning for the next 32 minutes that we'll be watching the trend here, and we're going to stay on with this because it is a tornado warning, and the situation could quickly change if we see a tornado developing if we get any reports of any confirmed tornadoes. But right now it is a radar indicated situation here with that tornado warning. So let's go ahead and look at the velocity picture here. So go ahead and switch to that and seeing if we're getting any rotation. And we are seeing at least an indication that there is some rotation right in there, right north of Cardington. Just right there where you see the red and the green meeting. That is a stronger indication of rotation. It's a little bit stronger than what we were seeing in the last 15 minutes or so. It's not the strongest rotation, so this is why we may not get a confirmation of any tornado on the ground, but there is likely some rotation in the clouds and that potential that we could see a tornado developing here in the next short while. So we are going to be focused in very much on this storm here as it is tracking to the east at about 35 miles per hour. So this is going to be impacting, again, central and eastern parts of Morrow County here. This is impacting areas to around Highway 42 and north of Ashley, and northwest of Chesterville. It does look like this is going to be heading towards Mount Gilead and north of Cardington and well south and east of Caledonia. So this is what we're focused in right in there, is where we have that potential for some rotation. There is rotation on radar, but right now no confirmation of a tornado on the ground. But still, this is an evolving situation. A lot can change. Even just in the matter of minutes, a tornado can develop. And what we have to watch is if we start to see a stronger signal of any rotation. Right now, there is rotation where the red and the green are meeting right there. Does it get a little bit stronger here in the next few minutes? Each time that little beam goes across the screen, that is the radar, and we get an update to the radar about every 5 minutes. And actually, there's another update, and it looks like it's not as strong. So that's a good indication. Maybe we just had it flared up a little bit, and now it's starting to weaken just a little bit. So hopefully that's the case, and we don't have to deal with any sort of tornadoes this afternoon. But it was strong enough that we were watching this on 10 TV Plus. The National Weather Service issued a severe thunderstorm warning earlier this afternoon, just in the last half hour, and tagged it with a tornado possible because they saw some rotation. And now they have seen the rotation get a bit stronger, and that's why they decided to issue that tornado warning. So let's go ahead and go back to the radar picture here. Again, anywhere in this red box, that is where we have that tornado warning in effect. So that includes Cardington, that includes Mount Gilead, and that also does include far southeastern parts of Morrow County here into Chesterville. Again, the whole red polygon, this whole red box, that is that tornado warning that is currently in effect here for the next 30 minutes. So really going to be focused in on that and how this storm develops. If it continues to develop, if it still shows signs of rotation, it's going to be a concern here for another half an hour. What we just saw on the velocity picture, basically what that is winds blowing in different directions. When we have reds and greens kind of coming together, it's an indication for us, as we're looking at the radar picture, that there's some rotation. So on the radar right now, there's definitely some heavy rainfall. There is potential, in addition to that threat for a tornado, of hail up to quarter size and winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. So we also have that severe thunderstorm warning in effect. However, again, we're going to go back to the velocity picture here and just look at that one more time. So again, what we're talking about, if you're used to watching us, with severe weather, we talk about velocity. We talk about that a lot with tornadoes, and we're looking at the colors here. We're looking at where the winds are blowing. We're looking at winds blowing in one direction. So notice the legend up here. We got winds blowing towards the radar. We also have winds blowing away from the radar. So that gives us that spin. That gives us that rotation. The thing to keep in mind is it's not necessarily as strong a signal that we usually look for when we talk about potential confirmed tornadoes on the ground. So that's good news. Not saying that a tornado couldn't develop here in the next few minutes. That's definitely a possibility. That's why there is a tornado warning in effect. But because of the radar image that you see right here, it's not a strong signal. So it is something we'll have to watch closely as we go through the next short while. So I'm going to step off screen here. I just want to look at this storm a little bit closer. And there's another scan of the radar picture. So you'll notice it does look like it did strengthen a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in, and right in there, that's what we're talking about. So this is that area of rotation that is strong. It is there right over Mount Gilead, just northeast of Cardington, actually crossing over Ohio 61 and US Highway 42 is where this is currently located. And this is the area right there where we at least have some rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if we have maybe a wall cloud developing, potential for a funnel, but right now so far we haven't gotten any confirmation that there is a tornado, so that is definitely some good news. But as I've just mentioned there, that can quickly change here over the course of the next few minutes. So we're watching every scan of the radar picture as it comes in just to see what changes, because we all know the weather is constantly changing, and so these storms are constantly changing. They're constantly strengthening, weakening. There's a lot of things that are happening inside the storm, so we have to wait every 5 minutes for that radar picture to come in, and it gives us a better idea of what the storm is doing. So we've seen that with this thunderstorm where it gets a little bit stronger rotation, and then it weakens. It's kind of going up and down, if you will, and so we'll have to see how that plays out. If this gets a little bit stronger, that's going to definitely be a concern here into Mount Gilead. So if you are in Morrow County, you need to be taking your tornado precautions now. Basement, lowest level of your home. If you don't have a basement, that's an interior closet or a bathroom away from windows, just to put as many walls between you and the outside to keep you the safest as possible if a tornado is developing. So I'm going to check to see if the National Weather Service has any more updates on that storm right now. Again, this is a radar indicated tornado warning that was just issued here in the last few minutes that the Weather Service and we have been tracking here on 10 TV Plus, with that potential that there could be some rotation, and then eventually that rotation got strong enough that the National Weather Service decided to issue a tornado warning. In addition to that, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch that remains in effect until 7 p.m. here today. So the highest threat with any storms later on, especially this afternoon into this evening, is going to be for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and potential for some quarter-size hail. However, some of these storms can kind of start to do their own thing, and this is what this one storm is doing. It started to develop some rotation, and that is why the National Weather Service decided to issue a tornado warning. Again, this is a tornado warning that is in effect for Morrow County, and that's going to continue here for about another 25 minutes. So want to mention, if you're just joining us right now here on 10 TV and 10 TV Plus, we have a tornado warning in effect for Morrow County, as you can see there, until 2:30. So 24 more minutes on the storm. And what we're watching is this area where we had some rotation. It's still there. I will say, though, looking at the radar picture right now, it's not as impressive. It's not as strong, and that's good news. That's what you want. Want all this to fade away. We'll be done with the tornado warning, and we'll get you back to programming. But because there was a signal that there was some stronger rotation here in the last 10 minutes, the tornado warning was issued. But as we're looking at the latest scan of the radar, you will notice that it's not as strong, and that's a good sign. That's a signal that the rotation may be starting to fall apart. It's interacting maybe with some other storms and starting to weaken just a bit more. So hopefully that's the case. We're going to be watching this. Again, this is moving over Mount Gilead, so if you live there, you need to be in your safe place right now. Lowest level of your home, away from windows, a basement, or just an interior closet or a bathroom that just doesn't have any windows, as we are tracking this potential tornado. Again, it is all radar indicated, so from this moment, we haven't gotten any indication that there has been a sighting, there's any confirmation of a tornado, and hopefully that remains the case. Hopefully we don't have anything developing, and we can get past this, and we'll get through this tornado warning and get moving on to the rest of the day and looking at the rest of the storms that are developing here later on. So overall, the tornado threat is not very high for today. Just this is one tornado warning that we're going to be watching for the next 20 minutes. So that is a look at that storm. Going to zoom things out again. We're going to be watching this one very closely, but I want to give you a picture of what we're looking at here still across the rest of the state of Ohio. We have some more storms that are developing. These ones are not severe, but it is still something we'll have to watch how they interact with this environment this afternoon, and if we can get some more development here over the course of the next several minutes. So again, tornado warning in effect for Morrow County. Other storms out to the west, not severe, but some heavy downpours, some gusty winds up to 30-40 miles per hour. Definitely not out of the question. So going to go ahead and zoom back into our tornado warning here. Again, this is in effect for the next short while here for another 45 minutes. Actually, another, 24 minutes. There's that tornado warning again. This is far north of the Columbus Metro. This is affecting central and eastern Morrow County here with that threat for a tornado. So again, this is in effect until 2:30 here this afternoon. We have other storms that are happening. Again, if you're getting some thunderstorms right now, there's not a high threat for tornadoes or hail or wind with the rest of the thunderstorms here at the present time. The severe weather is focused in Morrow County, where we have the severe thunderstorm warning and more so that tornado warning here just around Mount Gilead, northeast of Cardington. If you live in Cardington right now, you're pretty much safe. This is moving now to the east, so give you the all clear here on the tornado warning. Caledonia, give you the all clear as well, because this storm is moving away from Caledonia. Where it is not clear, again, Mount Gilead, we just got a report of some hail there with the core of the storm where we have that pink shown up there. That's a strong indication that there's at least some quarter-size hail. And then Chesterville, if you live in Chesterville, you should be in your tornado safe place right now because of that area of rotation that we're tracking moving across Morrow County here at the present time. So going to go ahead and switch over to the velocity picture one more time just to see exactly what we're looking at, and still not a very strong signal that we're looking at, very strong rotation here, but I'm going to go ahead and move the map just so you can look at it just a little bit more. And over the last several scans of the radar, definitely some weakening going on here. So definitely some good news, but again, still for another 20 minutes, we do have a tornado warning in effect for Morrow County. And Chief Meteorologist Jerry Martz is in this afternoon. He's been tracking the storms all day today as well. And Jerry, we're going to be watching this very closely here for the next 20 minutes. It's been a very active afternoon. You saw some of those pictures and reports from hail earlier and also some severe weather. You had mentioned, Aaron, that severe thunderstorm watch that goes until 7 o'clock and doing a great job of kind of getting people up to speed and kind of carrying through the active weather this afternoon. Take a quick look if we can go to weather 2, and that will show the active weather again, mainly off toward the north. We've got another warning coming in. We'll get you that momentarily. Let me just click on that while we're here. That is for a rotating thunderstorm that is moving toward Knox and Morrow County. That, I believe, is the same storm moving to the east. Aaron, correct me if I am wrong. Yes, that is the same storm. So that's the same storm. So let's go to weather 2, if we can, just to kind of keep things in perspective. With two of us here, we've got to kind of keep our ducks in a row. And that storm, again, moving, main threat from that is a rotating thunderstorm. What that's telling us, and I heard Aaron talking when I was getting dressed, suit on, was that this storm has been showing a little bit sign of weakening and that rotation broadening just a bit. Not to be dismissive of the storm, though, because we're still looking at the wind speeds up to 60 miles an hour. A tornado is still possible. Hail up to 1 inch. So that's something, again, that we've been watching very closely. As we look at the radar perspective at whole, we're going to put this back and kind of give you the bigger picture, then zoom back in there. That does show the active weather again as we move off toward the north and kind of get this to work for me here. Bear with me for just a second. Maybe I'm not in play mode, Aaron. If you could double check or give that a little kickstart, that might help. There you go. Thank you so much. The radar scan does show we're going to track that particular storm. I think I'm doing it. There we go. For some reason, it's not going. I got you covered, though. All right. Because to kind of squall that and move that out to the east at the speed the storm is moving, and that does show the active weather again moving pretty much out of Morrow County. And that's good news. I'll get out of the way there. Allow you to track that through. That does put communities just to the east of Belleville, north of Fredericktown, around Chesterville, east of Mount Gilead, Belleville at 242, Yankeetown at 256, Lakeview at 304, and Newville at 3:10 p.m. So that's, again, some of what we're looking at with respect to the active weather across much of central Ohio. Several of these thunderstorms early have been prolific hail producers. We can go and maybe check out that new rotating thunderstorm warning and click on that, and it'll take us right to that next particular storm. May very well be on the line, and that is indeed the case. That storm now moving east, Mount Gilead, Cardington. That's east of Marion, and that's the same storm again, and the same trail of storms, I should say. It looks like the tornado warning has expired. They did allow that to expire. Replace that with a rotating thunderstorm warning. So we'll stay on for another minute or so just to bring you up to speed. Aaron, if you can maybe just zoom out for a second and give us the perspective, and then we'll make sure that we're ready to track these storms. And just as Aaron did a few moments ago, these are the two thunderstorm warnings moving out of northern parts of Morrow County. That area, again, off toward the northeast, but closer to central Ohio. There's Belleville, and there's down to the south near North Bloomfield. Marion County is pretty much out of it, except for the western part. This storm is not warned, but still can produce some hail and some heavy wind. The storm to the east of Mount Gilead moving into parts of Knox County and southern Richland County. That's what we're concerned about. And where you see that black outline on those thunderstorm warnings, that is an indication of a rotating thunderstorm. And as Aaron just mentioned, the tornado warning has been taken down, replaced by a significantly severe thunderstorm warning. Still the potential there of rotation. Further off toward the south, we can zoom out for just a second and give people some perspective. We're seeing a few of those pockets of instability and then that line of thunderstorms out to the west. Once that passes by,
taking a few hours to do so, we still have the chance for some disruptive weather, hail being the main threat along with gusty winds, and as we saw in this particular thunderstorm, off toward the north, possibility of some rotation as well. So that's kind of the bigger picture right now. Much of central and eastern and southwestern Ohio under severe thunderstorm watches. They go on for almost another 5 more hours. So it's not going to storm the entire time, but it might storm as we look at that opportunity for between now and about sunset tonight. There's a look at those watches. I would not be surprised if that extended to the east, but really depends what happens over the next 1 or 2 hours with that line of thunderstorms moving on through. And again, including Columbus, including Delaware, Licking County, West Union County, and over to Madison County, that severe thunderstorm watch goes until 7 p.m. So back to the radar scan for a second, which will just kind of pick out and pinpoint some of those areas of active weather. That does show, again, the pocket of thunderstorms east of Bell Fountain. We had some huge hail around Russell's Point near Lakeview earlier today, but the main focus then is not that line of storms around Marion. That's disruptive, but this particular thunderstorm just now moving east of Mount Gilead, unfortunately, just about to cross over Interstate 71, and that's a rotating thunderstorm there. Earlier was a tornado warned storm, I believe out of the National Weather Service office in Cleveland. Maybe we can take a deeper look there that kind of dissects. You see where we talked about, it's not something you will see on your phone, not something you might see normally when we're looking at radar. What we're looking at, it's actually pretty easy to see when we zoom in like we are right now. Some of that red and that green next to each other. Basically, one color is going away from the radar, one color coming toward the radar. And when that rotation tightens a little bit, that is an opportunity for not just a rotating thunderstorm, but for that thunderstorm to actually produce a funnel cloud that could reach the ground, aka a tornado. So at this point, there is not a tornado warning for Morrow County, but we're still tracking this dangerous thunderstorm because it's still showing signs of some rotation. There's a look at the hail from this particular storm as well. I don't know if we're able to put a size on that. Earlier, the storm had been producing up to about 1-inch hail. The
Pretty
size
small, though.
About 1/3 of an inch. That's about dime size or a little bit pea-size hail. So still not insignificant. But as you've experienced in many spots today, these thunderstorms have a tendency to kind of ebb and flow, to kind of strengthen and pulse and then weaken. And that was the case with this particular storm. So still bears watching, of course, as it moves off toward the east. We're sounding the all clear for Mount Gilead for the moment and St. James, but areas around Chesterville, North Lucerne, north of Fredericktown, Yankeetown, and Belleville. Again, we're getting up near Mohican State Park and some areas which everybody's familiar with. Those areas are going to be hit very hard by this particular thunderstorm in the next couple of minutes. Aaron?
Thanks, Jerry. And yeah, we are keeping a very close eye on that storm and all these other ones developing here on the radar picture right now because they all have a little bit stronger cores now that we're kind of getting into this prime heating of the day. The environment is getting a bit stronger, a bit more energy available for these storms to really tap into. And that's what's happening here on the radar picture because we again have that storm no longer tornado warned. That is definitely good news. But notice these other storms that have some of that pink showing up there, indication that we could see some strengthening with those, producing some hail, some gusty winds. Also does bear watching as these storms are still on the strong side. So even if there's not a severe thunderstorm warning and you encounter that storm, the one south and east of Mount Vernon, also the one north of New Albany and southeast of Delaware, it's not going to be great. It's going to be some heavy rainfall, some gusty winds over 35 miles per hour, and potentially some small hail, maybe up to near penny size, not out of the question. So still a stronger thunderstorms, but definitely does bear watching here as we go through the next few minutes as we're watching all of these thunderstorms that are really starting to take shape.
Good call.
So going to be keeping a close eye on that, and it does look like we are going to be wrapping things up here. So Jerry, going to send it over to you.
Thanks, Aaron. We're going to be continuing our coverage of the severe weather threat for this afternoon and this evening on 10 TV Plus. We're going to turn 10 TV back to regular programming. We will, of course, be back on the air at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock, and if sooner, if need be, back on 10 TV. But watch us on 10 TV Plus. Another thing to keep in mind, we'll be streaming on Facebook, I believe, and YouTube. If you have the opportunity to send us comments, the phone number is 614-460-3345. An opportunity for you to let us know when you can do so safely. Do not go out in the heat of the storm, but we can do so safely about what you're experiencing. And if you have questions about what to expect and when, a lot of people have plans this evening. It's Friday night on the eve of Kentucky Derby weekend. For some, that means getting out and enjoying and relaxing with friends. So we'll not just look at this evening's forecast, but going through the next couple of days as well. So All right, thanks. All right, we're on 10 TV Plus for extended period of time on this Friday afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jerry Martz, joined with meteorologist Aaron White, and Aaron's been tracking these thunderstorms all morning. Oh, okay. Step out for a second and drop back in.
So definitely not good conditions there for anyone traveling on I-71, but indications here on the radar picture that we're seeing, at least for hail, it's not a strong signal. That's definitely some good news. So really what we are seeing is that this storm may be weakening once again. It got strong once and then it weakened and then it got strong again. Got that tornado warning prompted and then now maybe on a weakening trend once again. So we're watching this here throughout this afternoon. A lot of this happens all the time when we get storms. We see these storms sort of cycle and go through different changes. And really that's what weather is. Weather is always changing and the storms are always changing. So we have to watch everything over the last several minutes, how they have changed in the last hour, how they're evolving now, and what's going to be potentially happening here over the course of the next 10, 15 minutes, or even the next couple of hours. We're going to see storms continue through this afternoon. We're going to catch a break eventually, but then we're going to be watching for more storms developing or really moving into the region here later this evening into the early part of tonight. It does look like we got a new severe thunderstorm warning issued.
Yep,
Jerry, if you want to
share the stage here, Aaron, and thanks again for picking up 2 o'clock when that tornado warning was issued. Latest one, severe thunderstorm warning, Delaware County, Licking County till 3 o'clock. So we're on 10 TV Plus, and we appreciate you joining us and dropping in. And we mentioned earlier that you were able to text us and reach out 614-460-3345. Text us if you can safely what you're experiencing. Do not put yourself in danger, of course. But right now, the latest one we're talking about is a severe thunderstorm warning, Delaware, Licking County. This one is moving pretty slow. I know that earlier in the weekend and even earlier in the day today, the storms are moving a little quicker, 25 miles an hour.
Okay.
That's a little bit concerning because that means that you're going to get impacted by that storm in a negative way for a longer period of time. Radar indicated with quarter-size hail, that's significant, and of course 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Hartford, Utica, Center Village, Sunbury, and Galena, areas that are under the threat from this particular storm.
Okay. Yeah, looking at it here on the radar picture, I mean, we are talking about a rather strong thunderstorm right now here that is moving to the east, again, just east of I-71 right now. And that's going to be tracking to the east, you said, about 25 miles per hour.
25 miles an hour, yep.
So let me go ahead and get that going here one more time. So bear with us just
Sure.
for one moment as we get this our computer loaded up. It's getting a little taxed here today
That's
with
all right. It's good.
different
We've got,
things happening here, and looks like it's yeah, there we go. Okay, there's the radar picture. So
All right, so again, we're updating you on the latest severe thunderstorm warning for Delaware County, Licking County, southeastern Delaware, northwestern Licking till 3 o'clock. That storm near Sunbury right now putting up to quarter-size hail, so that is about 1-inch hail. And this storm is moving at about 25 miles an hour. As we mentioned, that is a bit concerning because of that relatively slow speed. That means it's going to be impacting those areas again and again. So we're looking pretty, that was just an extended area in the past 30 seconds.
okay, so they did extend
include
it
Knox
now.
County as well in that particular storm.
Okay, yeah, and this is, again, still moving at that same speed of 25 miles per hour. So storm is going to be moving from Delaware County. Eventually, it's going to be continuing to track to the east and moving into Knox County here. And potential is there for quarter-size hail. And what we're really looking at is this area right in here. And notice even this other storm to the east. That one still is pretty strong, not severe warned at least for that one, but it still does bear watching because that also could bring a threat for some hail. But really right in there, just east of Sunbury and just southwest of Centerburg, that's a potential for that hail of, again, up to quarter size and winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour as it continues to track to the east and maybe a little slight north of east here with a speed of 25 miles per hour. So it's not moving very fast, but that just means that if you're stuck under it, you're going to be dealing with that hail and the torrential rainfall for a little bit longer. And as we're talking about it, that other storm does look like it just got a severe thunderstorm warning issued for it. So let's go ahead and take you there. Okay, so this is for the other storm that I was just talking about, the one further to the east. This is going to be moving into just moving towards the Newcastle area. So this also has that potential, a little bit stronger potential. You'll notice for the hail, that would be hail size of just about $50, so a little bit larger than a quarter, and definitely a concern here as it continues to track into the Newcastle area. So let's go ahead and look at the hail just to see what we're getting. At least right now, let's go ahead and look at the radar. And for the hail, there's definitely an indication. It's not just the one color. We're seeing a couple of different colors here of some gray showing up there. That's an indication that we could be talking about at least nickel-size hail, maybe as large as a quarter. We're going to be waiting for that next scan to see if any blue shows up. That's the next color that we watch for this hail. And we saw that earlier today. We saw golf ball size hail around Russell's Point, and the color that was shown up there was a very light blue, indicating golf ball size hail. This signal, this signature right here, not as high. It's a little bit weaker, so the hail maybe not as significant, but still, I mean, if we're talking about quarter size to $50 size hail coming into the Newcastle area, that's definitely something you want to be concerned about. So make sure you stay away from windows. Don't just go to the window and watch the storm, because they're also not, are we only talk about hail, but also some wind with that storm. That hail can, of course, damage your cars, but it also can damage the siding and even potentially the windows of your home. So make sure to stay away from windows and just wait out the storm until it passes here this afternoon. So let's go ahead and switch it back to the radar picture just to see the storm again a little bit more. Look at it. I know it's not showing up here with a different radar site. But again, this is a severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect here for this afternoon. So let's go ahead and move things around just a little bit more. So if you're just joining us here on 10 TV Plus, watching these storms developing this afternoon, if you're also watching us on Facebook, you can drop a question in the comments section as we're tracking this severe weather. We have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 7 p.m. this evening. That's for all the storms that are developing right now. This is round number one. We're talking about a second round of storms coming in later this evening into the early part of tonight. The window for that after 7 p.m. until midnight, that we could be talking about more storms, could bring the threat for winds over 60 miles per hour, potentially some hail. But I think that with that second round, it's going to be wind and it's going to be a heavy rainfall threat compared to this afternoon, where we're talking about hail, wind, and what we just saw just in the last half hour was that potential tornado threat. Again, with that tornado warning, we did not get any confirmation. Jerry, I don't know if you saw anything from the Weather Service, but I don't think there was any confirmation of a tornado. So good news, it was just radar indicated. It was a precaution. We as meteorologists, we look at the radar, we look at what we're seeing, and noticed that there was some rotation, and the Weather Service decided to issue a tornado warning on the precaution that there could have been a developing tornado. So we'll have to wait and see if there was any confirmation later on. But as it stands right now, based on what we were looking at on the radar picture earlier, it did not look like there would have been a tornado with that. So
Aaron,
definitely some good news.
Let's put the radar scan back up there. I know that was getting to the nearest site, which was, I believe, out of Pataskala. But we probably can get, and I'll flip it over. Yeah, you got it? Go to local, just go to Cleveland. That'll probably give us a little bit of idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to give a bit of perspective right there. And you mentioned some of those cells, and what we talked about earlier too was that these cells that are formed kind of out on their own have the advantage of kind of being a little bit stronger, but also pulsating in their strength and weakening as they kind of ebb and flow over very short periods of time. So that's something we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of been happening all afternoon. They just kind of go through that phase, the ups and downs, and watching to see that, because when we get that flare up, we get that brief potential for hail, and it may not continue all the way across the county, and hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's just a small window that we are talking about potential for some larger hail, but still, in any case, it is a concern, and that's why we have multiple severe thunderstorm warnings. One for this storm that is moving to the east, affecting areas around Newcastle. Another severe thunderstorm warning. That one looks like it may be weakening just a little bit more, just south of Centerburg there, and north and west of Utica, north of Johnstown. So that would be some good news. It could be a situation where this storm out ahead of it is taking some of the energy, and this one following behind it is starting to lose its momentum, lose its energy, and maybe on a weakening trend. Going to be watching that here with that severe thunderstorm warning that still is in effect for at least the next half an hour. And then even that storm further to the north. Let's go ahead and move up to that. So just bear with me just for one moment as we zoom up to the north and looking at that storm again. And kind of what's concerning about this one, this is again the one that we were watching earlier on that had produced that or prompted that tornado warning, is that it's still fairly strong. It still has that chance that we could be talking about, at least quarter-size hail, maybe if not a little bit larger than that. But then also just kind of the orientation of that. I'm going to switch over to the velocity picture. I just want to see what we're looking at here, and if there is something there, Jerry, that we're at least seeing here on the radar just north of Fredericktown, south of Belleville. A little bit of area of rotation, again, where the red and the green, it's not strong. It's pretty still far away from the radar site, so we're likely looking at least a few thousand feet above the ground, but still it's something that we have to watch. If there is any rotation trying to develop, it is something we'll have to watch over the next few scans of the radar picture.
Yeah, Aaron, so you've mentioned that the radar scan is shooting about 1,000 or 2,000 feet above that particular cell, and we'll get that radar situation resolved. Still a rotating thunderstorm, and even in the headline of the warning, it does actually go so far as to say tornado is still possible. So that's something that we're looking at still rather closely. And do see, again, obviously your tension between Belleville and Fredericktown, and that's what that black line around that orange box means. It's subtle, but it's effective. That's a rotating thunderstorm warning. And I think rotation, yes, but I think hail is also up to an inch to inch and a quarter hail, and that's getting significant too. Yeah,
definitely. And let's go back, and I'm going to, since we're zoomed out a little bit at looking at all three storms right now, going to go ahead and switch it over to the hail picture just to see what we're getting. And a little bit stronger indication from just the last time I showed this is we at least have the chance for some hail, and now that we're seeing some lighter grays showing up there, that's an indication that we could be talking about near quarter-size hail. Again, this is moving into Newcastle. This other pocket of hail on that other storm, potentially up to about nickel size, potentially as large as a quarter. It is being warned for that. That's why there is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for that potential of quarter-size hail now east of Interstate 71. And then also further to the south, I'm going to actually zoom into that because that's one's a little bit stronger area of rotation. So let's zoom into that storm right there. Again, south of Centerburg, we're seeing a pocket where we could be talking about hail at least quarter size. Let's go ahead and get some info on it and just see what we're talking about here with that storm. Okay, so it is still saying for quarter-sized hail. So it hasn't gotten any stronger, so maybe the other storms are weakening. And even notice there's a new scan of that. And
take a look. We can go to weather backup for a second and kind of give you a reset, Aaron. You've been on since just before 2 o'clock, if memory serves. It's only a short while ago, but that does show the scope of the thunderstorms as we look at the opportunity again for the wide area being impacted. It's pretty much the entire viewing area. And we do have that severe thunderstorm watch in effect until 7 o'clock. So I'm going to try and get over there, and if my computer doesn't work, I appreciate a helping hand by a friendly meteorologist. But again, the bigger picture shows scattered activity all throughout the viewing area, some of which is severe, some is subsevere. But just a quick note, the area that we're watching most closely right now is to the northeast of Columbus, bounded by 71 and 70, around Mount Vernon, around Newark. We're talking Knox County, eastern Morrow County, part of Coshocton County. As those thunderstorms stretch out, there are other active storms down around Chillicothe with some hail and some lightning. But again, the main focus between now and about another 25 minutes are the severe weather off toward the north. So we're going to take a closer look to those particular storms right now and just kind of move in that general direction. The other thing I want to do is take a look at something we don't show all the time. We're going to kind of zoom in. We'll stop this moving and just kind of give you a steady state look right now at a current condition. You see those individual pockets. Like the past 2 storms, was Tuesday, Thursday. It wasn't that long ago, but we've got a pretty long severe weather week. Many of those storms that came through were linear in nature, and that's not always a guarantee of what kind of weather you're going to get or what kind of storm impacts are greatest or least. But with the bowing or those segments, it almost always has wind as the main culprit, hail at number 2, and then isolated tornadoes as number 3. When this storm structure is as it is today, it's a bit more isolated in nature. Those thunderstorms have the opportunity to kind of grow on their own, but as you've seen and Aaron and I have talked about for the past couple of minutes, they will ebb and flow. They will pulse and they will subside with time. They cannot maintain an exceptionally high strength for a long period of time, but they will drop a little bit and then kind of refire. So that, unfortunately, is what we've been seeing and what we will see across just about everywhere in central Ohio between now, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, and even beyond sunset. We might not be totally out of the woods. So we're going to put a couple of tracks on there for you on some of those particular cells. Most notably, the ones we're looking at right now would be just to the north and east of Columbus. Again, moving northeast at about 30 to 35 miles an hour. Again, this is a little bit slower than storms were earlier in the week. Looking at Warsaw at 250, Keene at 303, Coalport at 3:30 p.m. The other storm we're watching to the southwest of that, and that's riding right along the county line between Knox County and Licking County, also moving east about 30 miles an hour. So Utica, 253, Newcastle, 322, Tiverton at 326, Nellie at 331, and Spring Mountain at 335. And then the other storm we're watching, that is just off toward the north as well. That is just south of Mansfield. And that area up there, probably best known to central Ohioans for Mohican State Park. That storm moving east toward Jellaway at 252, Loudonville again, 3 o'clock, Ripley 316, and Holmes County off toward the east, and Millersburg between now and 326. So those are the pockets of disturbed weather that we're watching. These 2 thunderstorm warnings, the westernmost ones expire at 3 o'clock. This easternmost one expires at 3:15. The other thing we're looking at, and we don't show this very often, but it sometimes can provide a little bit of insight to what we're looking at here in the Weather Center, or we take a vertical look at the storm. And again, this just allows us to see what might be producing some moderate hail. And what this is showing right now is the elevation of the storm, meaning that the taller the storm, if you think about it just a second, hailstones gain their size and intensity by the number of trips and the amount of time they can stay suspended in the storms. Sometimes those updrafts, in order to get this massive thunderstorm to stay suspended, can be 60, 70, 80, 100 miles an hour. So when we talk about hail, what we're looking at is how tall those thunderstorms are reaching. In this particular one, between 40 and 50,000 feet. That is not insignificant, and that's something that we're watching closely. As we move that across that storm, you can see again the core of that storm literally riding right along the county line, and oftentimes where we see those deeper reds and purples, an indication that the hail is in the air, and sometimes you can actually see that hail falling down to the ground. That's not the case with this particular storm at this moment, but it could be for that one a little further off to the south. So let's just work it down a little bit further to the south here, and bear with me. Centerburg and Johnstown for 2 frames of reference. Both of those locations are in the clear from this particular storm. Utica, however, you are not. So let's take a closer look and track that storm quickly, and then we'll go back to looking at that slice of that storm to see what the hail potential is there. Moving that to the east, I definitely got to get out of the way of this one. It's not moving terribly fast at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. So Martinsburg, Zuck, and Newcastle, 310 to 336. And here's the storm slice for that particular storm. And again, you do see a little bit of deeper red. I'm going to draw it right along the county line there as a frame of reference. And then moving back and forth over that cell, you do see how quickly it ramps back up and intensifies. And then it kind of falls back as you go north into areas of Knox County. So that's something that we're watching very closely. So not something that you see, not something you get on your weather app or online, but something that we oftentimes will use here in the Weather Center just to get a closer perspective of some of those storms and the action they are presenting. So as we look at, again, the bigger picture for us, we're going to put the radar scan, we're going to put the lightning on here for just a moment to show the intensity. Unlike a couple of the pockets we had earlier in the week, we had hundreds of lightning flashes in a small concentrated area. You can clearly kind of connect those dots to those individual cells. Outside of that, it's actually not bad. It's partly sunny, it's breezy, it's warm, temperatures in the 70s. Unfortunately, those are some of the same ingredients that are producing and helping aid these thunderstorms in strengthening. So again, not bad if you're outside of these thunderstorms, but if you are underneath one of them, that could be problematic for the next couple of hours. I'd like to get your thoughts, Aaron, on a couple of things. One, especially as this watch goes until 7 o'clock, if you think that it might be expanded to the southeast of the current area. And then number two, if you feel that this back line, again, Aaron's been here all day monitoring the situation, jumped on around 2 o'clock with that tornado warning. If you feel that that last line from Marion back toward areas on I-75 about to head over toward Union and Madison County, will that be the end of it for the short term? And what are your thoughts on for the rest of the evening and even into tonight?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of things are happening here today. Of course, we got this round number one. I do think that back line is going to be the break, the end of it, at least for a couple of hours before we see more storms building in later this evening into tonight. Now, we are going to still watch those storms because they have that potential of becoming severe, as Jerry mentioned, that severe thunderstorm watch that you can see here until 7 p.m. And what we did see actually just in the more recently is further to the south and west, way down here around Cincinnati, another severe thunderstorm watch was issued for the second round. That's way far away still. That is over Kentucky. Those storms are going to be building in, and those ones do bear watching. So right now, we are still watching each of these thunderstorms here on the radar picture. Again, we still have severe thunderstorm warnings that are in effect because of that potential for some quarter-size hail, not out of the question here as we have those storms south of Mount Vernon moving towards the east and northeast. Not super quick, but 25, 30 miles per hour. And then you'll notice further to the south and to the west, we have a complex, a rather large complex of more showers and storms. And this is our second round of storms that's going to move in for this evening into the early part of tonight. So again, it's pretty far away. It's still got several hours. It's still got a long distance to track here to get into Ohio. And the questions that still remain are, what's it going to do? What's it going to do as it goes, over Kentucky and eventually into southern Ohio through the next several hours? Right now, what it's doing, well, it has severe thunderstorm warnings on it because of the potential for winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. Wouldn't be surprised if we're getting some hail with a couple of those storms. But really, as this continues to build and evolve, it's going to tap into an environment out ahead of it where there has been some sunshine, there's been a bit more energy available, and these storms are going to feed on that and continue to evolve and likely strengthen a little bit as they continue to get into the area around Lexington, getting towards the I-75 corridor here, and eventually moving into southern Ohio. Question that remains is how far north are they going to get? Are they going to get up to I-70? Are we going to see these impacting the Columbus Metro? Potential is there after about 8 p.m., but a lot of the more significant activity may stay south here into Kentucky and even into southern Ohio. So it still bears watching because of that potential being there. But still, the focus right now, at least for the immediate future, is on these severe thunderstorm warnings that are still in effect for that potential for some hail. And even if you're not under a severe thunderstorm warning, you're still getting some heavy rainfall, even around Delaware. Another storm that is just moving south of Marion, same area where we were tracking that one severe thunderstorm warning that did produce hail around Russell's Point. More heavy rainfall building in, potentially some small hail up to maybe a pea size south of Marion right now. So that storm does, we still have to watch each of these cells and if they strengthen a little bit or do they continue to weaken. And hopefully that's the case as we are watching basically all of this moving from the west to the east at least 25 miles per hour. That's what one of the severe thunderstorm warnings was issued for the storm, moving not quick, but 25 miles per hour. These are a lot slower than the storms that we were tracking earlier this week. Back on Tuesday, we had that huge complex of storms race across the state of Ohio. Those were moving at upwards of 55. Jerry, I think we at one point saw 65, 65.
70 miles an hour.
Yeah, they were moving
rough.
so quickly, and they didn't last that long. These storms different because they're sticking around a little bit longer. Heavy rainfall, it's going to be a concern. Potential, a lower end potential for some flash flooding. Wouldn't be surprised if we're at least getting some ponding and some minor street flooding in a few places as these storms are passing and then moving over the same location that just got some storms. So we have to watch that, but at least for the immediate future, the next hour or so, the concern is going to be for a couple of these storms to produce quarter-size hail and potential for those winds to gust up to near 60 miles per hour. So that is why we have that severe thunderstorm watch in effect here for the next several hours until 7 p.m. And then, Jerry, you're going to be watching that next complex because that's going to be building in as we saw. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back to that. Still pretty far away from here. We got several hours to watch that whole complex moving in from the south and west, and at least a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings on those storms south and west of Lexington. So we have to wait and really watch to see how those storms develop, how they evolve here over the next several hours.
So Aaron, looking at this, and I saw you do this earlier in the week, it was pretty handy. It might be a bit of a stretch, but let's just say 200 miles for a round number. For that distance from those storms to get through Cincinnati and Columbus, that's a lot of real estate to cover, and there are no guarantees when you're dealing with a chaotic system like this. But I'm just hearing the printer going off. Another rotating thunderstorm warning, so we'll get to that first, and then we will talk about that next line coming back in. That is for the area that now includes Knox County, and that's the same storm that was earlier in Morrow County, and then in Knox and Richland County, and now moving east over toward Knox County. 1 inch possible rotating thunderstorm there. And of course, I think hail, quarter-size hail and 60-mile-an-hour gusts.
Yeah, moving a little bit faster, 35 miles per hour now.
That's good. It doesn't sound like it's good news, but it is good news because that simply means that we are hopefully in a situation where we're not going to be looking at these storms sticking around for a long time. I didn't necessarily mean to do that. I apologize. We'll go back to that particular map there. That storm right now moving east of 35, you said, with hail and wind being the main threat. So let's just take a quick dive into that one. The newest warning that goes until 3:30. So I'm going to put a track on that just to give you a little bit of perspective. Again, appreciate you joining us on 10 TV Plus. And I don't know if we have any additional comments or questions on our text line, but I will spell this out around for the Jellaway and Greer, 257 and 307. Holmesville and Holmes County, 327 and 330, Millersburg at 332. So something that we're watching very carefully and unfortunately have been continuing to see these thunderstorms just moving off to the east at a pretty slow clip. And we talked about this one kind of strengthening and weakening. It hasn't gone to zero, so that's unfortunate, but we're also not seeing ongoing tornado warnings, and that is a little bit of good news there. Anything?
Yeah, definitely some good news. No questions at the moment, but again, if anyone has a question, if you're watching us here on 10 TV Plus, you can text that number. If we have that, if we can pull that up again. Otherwise, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, just drop a question in the comments section and we'll try to get to those here as we are tracking that potential of severe weather with these multiple storms that are developing. So there's the number. If you have your phone on you, if you want to send us a text message about what's happening in your area, if you want to give us a report, if you're hearing some heavy rainfall, send us a message. There's the number, 614-460-3345. And like I said, if you have a question, you can also send it to that number as well. So right now I'm looking to see if the National Weather Service is mentioning anything else about some of these thunderstorms. And again, we're watching the storms that with those severe thunderstorm warnings that were just issued for that potential that there could be a little bit of rotation in them. And that's why these warnings have been allowed to be extended a little bit further down the line into Knox County, and it looks further to the east into we got Richland County, Ashland, Wayne, Holmes, and Knox County, all in that severe thunderstorm warning.
And this is not a terribly populated area, so we're going to name out a couple of towns. Beautiful country, but not a ton of population. So if you are under the threat of this storm right now, south of Loudonville, near Mohican Park, if you're around North Liberty, Jelloway, Four Corners, and you have friends, family, neighbors, loved ones in Nashville, Greer, Glenmont, Gann, Danville, or Paint Valley, give them a call. Give them a heads up, text message. Let them know that this disruptive storm is coming their way. And this is the same storm that earlier produced a tornado warning out of the Cleveland office that went until about 2:20 this afternoon. But the ongoing rotation from this thunderstorm is still a bit concerning. At the very least, it's supporting some large hail and wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour. The other thing you'll notice too, which I just kind of caught on, and again, this is a single point in time that we're showing you, but it's not the way that the storm is going to continue. That's moving at 35 miles an hour.
Yes.
So we'll track that out for you. Those counties or those communities that I just mentioned, Nundup, Ripley, Greer, between now and 3:10. So we've got about 20 minutes further to the east around Holmesville and Holmes County. Millersburg at 3:33. Just again, beautiful country up there. Just trying to give you a little bit of a heads up on something that's coming your way. So disruptive weather this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us on 10 TV Plus. We're going to stay on until 3 o'clock unless things take a turn for the worse. It looks like it's just a continuation of some of those warnings. And let's just bring people up to speed. We can come back on camera, just a couple of meteorologists catching everybody up. We're going to be on the air at 4 o'clock today, but backing up a little bit, you did the noon broadcast today. What were your thoughts early on looking at this afternoon, and how are things playing out?
Yeah, I would say they're playing out pretty accurately. I mean, we were watching the storms developing on the computer projections showing storms popping up here this afternoon. I will say it's a little bit more widespread activity from what the computer projections were showing. So we are seeing a lot more scattered thunderstorms producing some severe weather, and really getting focused on how these storms are kind of taking some of the energy from maybe that second round later on this evening, and how that one's going to play out. Again, that's still far away. We were talking about it just a few minutes ago, further to the south and west right now over Kentucky, and seeing if that holds together, if it strengthens, if it weakens. Definitely going to be watching that. But from earlier at noon, tracking the storms, they really kicked off pretty quickly. I mean, by 1 p.m., even actually during the noon show, at just after noon, there was a storm developing just west of Bell Fountain, and after that, it quickly developed, it strengthened, and then we got our first severe thunderstorm warning at about 12:30, and then
been going ever since.
Escalated from there. Yeah.
So there's this small thing called the forecast that we've got to actually put together for the weekend, but we'll get to that. We've got news coming up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock, and then again at 11 o'clock tonight. We'll get you there and, of course, bring you up to speed. We're going to go until 3 o'clock on 10 TV Plus, just for our producers and our digital folks to know and kind of put a bow on that. If there is significant severe weather between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, we're going to break right back in again.
Of course, yeah.
And you had mentioned kind of the setup for this. This would be the third severe weather event this week. And none of them are the same. However, there have been areas that have been hit multiple times. I know that where I live, Delaware County, multiple times sub-severe storms, but disruptive weather. The other thing to keep in mind that you brought up too is that the rainfall from the flash flooding, the chance is not zero, but it's pretty low. But if you're one of those locations that had rain on Tuesday, significant rain, maybe even wee hours of Wednesday morning, again Thursday, and again today, when you see what's coming this weekend, that might be a bit concerning. We'll simply say, make sure your sump pumps are working. Make sure your drains around your house and gutters are clear. We're not talking about biblical rain in terms of a ton of rain, but if you're those locations that had rain 3 or 4 times, your ground is probably saturated, so it might be a little bit too much.
So more rain doesn't have anywhere to go. It's just going to run off, and could lead to some localized flash flooding. Some of the projections were showing potential for at least an inch of rainfall in the next 36 hours. With this activity now, this evening, and then of course more rain coming in here for Saturday. And something interesting that you can tune in here at 4 o'clock, going to be talking about this pattern that we're in, this stuck,
the rut.
The rut, this blocked pattern, and what what's causing it, what it's known as. So tune in at 4:45 for that analysis.
Dropping a little more weather knowledge in addition to it.
Yep.
So we're going to go on for a few more minutes. I'm going to go to the Chroma key and do a little more tracking, and then we'll kind of put a bow on this. But we're just bringing you up to speed on 10 TV Plus. Keep this number handy for both the next 7 minutes, but also for the rest of the spring and the summer and beyond. This is our text line that comes right into 10 TV, 614-460-3345. You can ask a question like, hey, what about my softball game? What about the cross-country meet? What about track? What about practice? I got a parade, I got a cookout, I got a wedding. We will be happy to try and get to all your questions, but that's the number that we have direct access to, 614-460-3345. And I'll just put a little asterisk next to that. What we are not able to tell you with a high degree of confidence is, will there be a hailstorm at this location at this minute? Even though we're now casting, we're in this event in real time, still are some things that are just not known to us.
Yeah, so, especially when there's so many storms on the radar, it's hard to pinpoint exactly every single storm and where all of them are going to be going. One thing I do want to mention, since we're talking about that number, got a few questions and some reports in here. A quarter-size hail in Howard, Ohio. Somebody is asking about the timing also for that second round of storms arriving into Delaware and Columbus area.
So I'll put a track on that for you right now. So let's just kind of pop on there and take a look at that particular storm. I can go back to a weather backup, please. That would be fantastic. That would show that area of disturbed weather again racing to the east. We're going to stop this radar scan for you and just kind of calm it down and just kind of stop it in real time. That does show the area that we're looking at to the west of Delaware right now. Can I stretch out my suit a little bit to be able to reach those top buttons? We're looking again at those storms just northwest of Columbus, talking around Delaware County, Dublin, and Westerville. To get you a radar that has a little bit better perspective on that, the one out of Wilmington is something that we rely on very heavily. It's the closest site to much of the metro. You do see a couple of those pockets where there literally, as that radar swipe went by, that pocket in northern quarter of Delaware County. I'm going to make an assumption that that's moving at about the same speed as the neighbors right in front of that. So let's just kind of drop that down a little bit and give us some real estate to talk about. I'm going to zoom in real quick and put a track on that for you. We're talking about arrival time. I think Delaware proper is fine, but we're really splitting hairs. If you're just north of Delaware on 23, that's concerning. Up near Ashley, up near headed toward Marengo at 328, east towards Sparta, Chesterville, and Lucerne. Now we're getting a bit out of Delaware County, but looking at southern parts of Morrow County and then western parts of Knox County, those areas again. This is not a severe thunderstorm, but it's a disruptive one if you've got plans between now and about 4 o'clock to the east. And as we put that into motion for you, actually zoom in just a little bit closer to get some perspective. This is a bit more populated area again, traveling right up 23. Great bologna sandwiches there in Waldo. If you're traveling through this storm, that might delay you getting there on 23. There's Ashley again, right on the county line. There's 42 going northeast toward Cardington. So some well-traveled roads, really between 23 and 42 east of Radnor. That is the worst weather in Delaware County right now. Not a severe thunderstorm, but something that we're keeping our eye on very closely. So we're just going to zoom it out for you and give you that perspective again. That does show what we're looking at large. Ongoing severe weather threat in the northeastern part of the viewing area for another 30 to 60 minutes. We're looking at a couple of thunderstorms in northern parts, extreme northern parts of Licking County over toward Knox County and then over toward Coshocton County. They're moving east at about 30 miles an hour. Behind that, where it is not raining or storming, Columbus, for example, not bad. You might see some blue sky, might see temperatures in the 70s, probably see some gusty winds. Please keep an eye to the sky. We're going to be doing the same thing all afternoon and all evening. We will let you know if severe weather is disruptive once again, and that's something to keep an eye on. We'll be doing that at 4 o'clock, if not sooner. But as we expand this just one more bit for you, and I'm going to move the map a little bit to show what's coming in from the west and south. This is just kind of what we're talking about, spotty showers. Not a solid line as we've seen for the past couple of days, and we track that for you and then kind of put it into motion. Watch how fast these storms just kind of bubble up and intensify and then move through. So we are talking about active weather around Chillicothe, active weather heading to the west of Washington Courthouse, and then also headed toward London. And then further off to the southwest, Aaron, there's a bit more. So you'd mentioned that earlier. Maybe take a quick look at that and what we can expect perhaps a little bit later in the afternoon and early this evening.
Yeah, and one thing I also want to mention, we're talking about these severe thunderstorm warnings that, are producing that potential for quarter-size hail. But some of these other storms that are not severe, they're still producing at least the potential for some small hail. We got a report around the Dublin area of some pea-sized hail just in the last 20 minutes, and then it's already sunny there. These storms are quick to move through because some of them are rather small, but they can still produce some very heavy rainfall, some small hail, some gusty winds, and then they clear out as compared to some of these other storms. And a new severe thunderstorm warning actually just got issued here.
Extreme eastern Athens County, just about to move over toward areas around Parkersburg. That's near Marietta as well. That storm, 60-mile-an-hour winds. I feel like a broken record because the storm threats for the most part are the same.
Yeah.
Wind speeds up to 60, hail up to an inch, and it's moving at about 25 miles an hour. So unfortunately, we just kind of rubber stamped a lot of these storms and the threats they are giving us. And that's one of the things we're worried about right now. Again, extreme eastern Athens County, down 50 toward Coolville.
Yeah, still, I mean, they're kind of doing exactly what we've been watching the last couple of hours. This, they flare up really quickly. They could produce that hail. They drop out. And then as they produce all that hail and the heavy rain, they also weaken. Yeah. And so they might be going through that phase here this afternoon. So we're watching all of it, and hopefully we don't have to deal with any more tornadic storms like we had. Of course, there was no confirmation of a tornado. We had rotation. That has faded away. Still going to be watching that chance. And then, of course, the storms later on. Again,
we're going to be back on at 4 o'clock on 10 TV with live coverage of the weather and, of course, bring you up to the news of the day. If we need to cut in earlier, we will do that on 10 TV or 10 TV Plus. We're going to keep you posted. Download the 10 TV app to stay connected, and the 10 TV Plus app on any of your connected television devices. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jerry Martz.
And Meteorologist Aaron White, and we will talk about the storms and everything else later on.
See you at 4.